Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Shared Dream. This is a brand new game on Kickstarter. It is a 2 to 4 player fully cooperative game, and it takes roughly an hour to 2 hours to play. In the game itself, there are two different types of people. You have sleepers, which are regular, everyday people that go along with their lives and think anything extraordinary ever happens. And then you have the enemas, which are people that can bring their dreams and nightmares to real. So, in the game, the players, depending upon the scenario they choose, have shared a particular dream. And when they wake up, they notice that there are certain parts of this dream that have come to life. And so they are going to move around the city and re-explore some of these locations and things that they did in their dream that will allow them to piece together story elements that players will have. Each player will have a deck of cards, and they will work through that deck as the game progresses to discover more about their story and what part they are going to play in it. On top of this, like I said, the enemas are able to bring aspects of their dream to life. So they can bring different artifacts into the game, and they can also transform into their dream states, which can range from pyromancers to telepaths, lightbringers to special cyborg police officers, and a bunch of other things, which is really, really neat. So my opinions of the game so far is that I really like it. It's something that's very unique and different. It's something that we haven't seen before. And it kind of vaguely reminds me of like a particular science fiction movie or sci-fi movie that you've watched, but you can't quite remember all the details. So I like games that are cooperative. I like miniature games, which this satisfies both of those needs. The game itself is very unique as far as its artwork and its design. I like the aspect that depending upon the scenario you play, it changes the game. Each scenario is focused on different elements, so if you want a combat scenario, there's those. There are story-driven scenarios. There are all kinds of these different scenarios that will allow you to play the game in different ways. Like I said, when you're working together with players, it's a different feel, and the players are sharing this particular story. But each player has their own particular part of that story. So each player is going to be telling that particular story to the other players as they move around the board and solve different things. On top of that, I like the combat elements to it. Having to fight the Shades and the Reavers adds different twists to it. On top of that, depending upon the scenario you're playing, you might also have to travel to different locations and perform tests to stop certain aspects from progressing or making the final boss worse. So I like that you have to really focus and decide which way you're going to go, and sometimes you have to really make some hard decisions in the game, whether you're going to help yourself or whether you're going to try to help the team in the end. So I really like that, and it's a lot of fun as far as being able to bring that dream persona in, because you really turn into quite a badass. And you get to do all these really cool things. You have all these different abilities and different things. But on top of that, each time there's a balance that you have to meet, as each time you spend your conviction points, they turn into nightmare points, which the nightmare points are going to hurt you because the higher up they go, the higher potential it is for a shadow or a reaver to come out, which, as you guys will see, those things definitely can cause some problems for the players and that they have to deal with them. So let's go ahead and head to the table, and I'll show you guys what this game's all about. For player setup, each player is going to choose a character they'd like to be in the game. On top of that, they're going to gather their animus version of that character, which is listed right underneath the character's name. So our Jerry here, his animus version is a Lightbringer. And so on his card, it's going to list his different stats for combat, magic, social, and movement. Underneath that, when he does damage to a monster within a combat attack, this is the amount of damage he does. And then he has his hit points. Underneath that are the 3 rows for his conviction, nightmare, and doubt. And these will be filled up during the game as you do different things or spend your conviction to gain nightmare and whatnot. So on his other side, the Lightbringer is what he invokes in his dream state. And with this one, it has the same skills, so combat, magic, social, and movement. But as you can see, some of these skills will go up considerably, and some will go down. From there, then the character, depending upon the level that you invoke him at, is also going to have some passive abilities that he gives you, or bonuses to his stats. From here, then you're going to get the 3 ability cards, and again, these are going to be based on the level that you invoke his animus at. You're also going to gain his standee token and his miniature for his Lightbringer. And you can also grab the other tokens you'll need. 3 doubt tokens, 5 nightmare tokens, and 5 conviction tokens, and a star token to mark which level you've invoked your animus at. Before the players are ready to start the game, they're going to go ahead and choose a scenario that they'd like to play, which is going to give them their objectives for that particular scenario, and the requirements for the locations that they're going to use when they build the map. From there, any additional setup points and where the starting taint is going to be. So let's go ahead and set up for this one, Beast at the Door. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and grab the tiles that we need. So again, like I said, there's required locations, so we're going to go ahead and grab those for all the different locations we need. And then based on the number of players that are playing the game, we're also going to get regular road tiles, and we're also going to get some stop tiles, which will be listed in the book. So I've gone ahead and grabbed all the ones we need, so we can go ahead and shuffle these up. And also keep in mind that this is all prototype materials. These are all going to be high-grade materials when you guys get them, when the game is finally done. So let's go ahead and lay these out. So with a 2-player game, it's going to be a grid of 4 tiles. For each row. And you want to line these tiles up so that the arrows connect in one way. Sometimes you'll have areas that won't connect, such as this one, but you do need to line them up so that they at least connect somewhere. They don't lead to nowhere. Now we can put out the rest of the decks of cards we're going to need. So each of these decks is going to go ahead and be shuffled before you put it out. So we have the Reaver deck, we have the Dark Magic deck, the Echoes deck, and the Artifact deck. On top of this, with the Beast at the Door scenario, we're also going to need the Beast at the Door Dream Fragments deck and the Beast Strikes deck. From here, then continuing on with our setup, it says the starting taint will have a taint in the high school, so we'll put 2 cubes there, 1 cube in the park, and 1 cube in downtown. And these are all listed on the Beast at the Door scenario card. And as you'll note, each of the locations that actually has a building on it has spots for taint, where the areas that have a stop sign or just the street zones do not. The last couple things we need to put out are our shade wheels. And then finally, for this scenario, we also need to give each of our heroes a personal reflections deck. So each of these decks is going to have a particular name to it, or a theme. So all the cards in that deck need to have the same theme. And then you'll have the start card on top, which is labeled on the side here. So from there, then each of these decks, you can go ahead and shuffle them up and then have the players take one of the decks. And there's 4 included in this set for this particular scenario. So we're going to go ahead and give each of our players one of those. From here, then the players can go ahead and flip over the top card and read it, and this is going to tell you where you start. So with this one, the Agilic Assistance, your reflection starts at the park. So Tolman can start in the park, and then for Jerry, he's going to start at McAllister's Investigations. And of course you would read all of the information on these to the players so that you guys can kind of tell a story, but I don't want to spoil all the fun that you guys are going to have going through these, so I'm not going to go ahead and read those for you. Shared Dream is played over an undefined number of turns, with each turn consisting of 2 phases, the day phase and the night phase. During each of these phases, there is going to be a set order to the way things are going to be resolved, which we'll take a closer look at during those phases. The first phase in each turn is the day phase, and there's a set order to this, as you guys can see here. The first step is to return any character from their animus form to their regular form. So if one of our characters had invoked their dream state, so the superhero or Lightbringer, at this point they would revert back to their regular form. Once they're done with that, then we'll move on to the second step, which is the echo. Each player draws one echo card, replacing their current one. This will not happen in the first turn of the game. Echo cards are little cards that are going to grant you either a bonus or penalty each turn of the game. After that, then we go on to the convictions and nightmare. So each player is going to gain one conviction token and one nightmare token. And then the last step is actions. So the players are going to decide in what order they're going to activate their characters, and the first player is going to go ahead and start by activating his character and performing up to 3 actions with him. So there are a number of different actions that the characters can perform. They can do these in any order they choose and any number of times up to the maximum of their 3 actions that they can perform. So these actions are movement, rest, attack, draw an artifact, reflect, or performing other actions from echoes, artifacts, or any scenario-specific things, or using a location for its action. So we're going to go ahead and have Jerry perform his turn first. So he's going to go ahead and spend one of his actions to go ahead and move. As he looks at his personal reflection card, his starting card, his goal is to make it to the police station in order to investigate the next card in that deck. So we're going to go ahead, and the police station's way up here, which you guys can't particularly see right now, but it's way up here. So our guy's going to go ahead and spend one of his actions to do a move, which will allow him to move his movement value of 3 spaces, which you have to follow the green arrows on the streets in order to make it to the next area. So from here is 1 movement, and then 2 movements. As the arrow goes up, we have to follow the green arrows, and then finally his 3rd movement point. So that was his first action. So he's going to go ahead and do another action to move. So he'll move 1, 2, and now that he's at the police station, he doesn't want to move anymore. So he has 1 action left. So we're going to go ahead and do a reflect now, since he's at the police station. So we're going to go ahead and take this start card and move it down, and flip over the next card for the police station. Sometimes there will be multiple cards. So for example, this one has a pair of high school cards. At that point, you would just randomly choose one of them to flip over and resolve. So the next card is the police station, and it will give you guys some more information, and then it'll tell you the next location you have to go to. So our next location is the DCMA headquarters, which is actually going to be right next to the police station. Now, we did have 1 point of movement left, but since we performed another action, we are not allowed to use that last point, and it is simply lost. You must complete 1 action before you start another one. So at this point, Jerry's turn is over, as he has done all 3 of his actions. And so then we're going to move on to our next person. So for his reflection, he is headed towards the downtown. So he's going to go ahead and spend his first action to move, which he only has 1 movement point. So he's going to move here. And then his second action, he'll go ahead and move downtown. And then for his 3rd action, he's not going to go ahead and resolve his reflect yet. He's going to go ahead and spend 1 action to rest to remove that nightmare. When you perform a rest, you can either remove 1 nightmare or gain an additional conviction token. So at this point, both players have performed their 3 actions, and so their turn is over. So now we're ready to move on to the night phase. So we're going to go ahead and flip over our quick reference guide, as you guys can see here. So now again, we're going to follow the steps in order. So the first one is the enemies are going to act. So all the enemies act, starting with the enemy with the lowest combat score. When an enemy acts, then they can perform their basic movement and then 1 attack if they're in a space with another character. As we don't have any enemies out right now, we don't have to do anything with that. So then from there, it says that we're going to raise the taint for all the locations that have the taint on them. So our park is going to get an additional 1, the school will get an additional 1, and the warehouse will get 1. From there, then we're going to do a nightmare check. So each player rolls 1 die. If the result is the same or below the number of nightmare a player has, they spawn an enemy. So we're going to go ahead and start with Scott over here. He rolls a 4, so he's good. And then Jerry. And he rolls a 4 as well, so he's good. And as you can see, you would compare it to the nightmare. And so he rolled a 4, and his nightmare is only at 1 right now, so he rolled over that. And then finally, the last step is the shared dream actions. So this is going to take all the different scenario specific things into play. So with Beast at the door, we're going to go ahead and flip over the top card for the Beast Strikes and resolve it. So this one says, the giant dog has claimed another victim. Its strength grows along with its bloodlust. Place this card face up next to the Beast's combat card. The Beast receives +1 combat when manifested. So this is not a real good card to pull right at the beginning of the game, as it's going to make the Beast stronger when we finally get to confront it manifested into the real world. So I've jumped ahead a couple turns so that I can show you guys some more of the action and how some of the other different features work. So again, we're at the start of the turn, so we're going to start with the day phase. And so first off, we're going to return our characters, which neither one of them invoked their alternate form. So then we're going to go ahead and draw echo cards. So the ones that we have will be discarded, and new ones will be drawn. So for our first guy, we have swiftness, so your movement is increased by 1. And then the second guy is corrupted. So with this one, whenever you receive any amount of nightmare points, you receive 1 additional. So at this point, then we would go to conviction, nightmare. So each of our players receives 1 conviction and 1 nightmare. But unfortunately, because of the corrupted, he receives 2. So we're going to go ahead and go with Jerry first. And so he's up in this space here that has a special action that it says you may draw 1 additional artifact card when drawing an artifact card here. So he's going to go ahead and spend 1 of his conviction to do that, because in order to draw an artifact card, you have to spend a conviction, which is normally going to be converted to nightmare, but since our nightmare track is full, this is simply just going to be discarded back to our pile. From there, then he can go ahead and draw 2 artifact cards because of the ability up there. So the first one he has is the Everlasting Candle, so I can discard this card to remove 1 doubt point, which will help keep him alive longer. And then the second artifact card that he draws is the Blood Drinker. So all attacks made while in possession of the Blood Drinker deal an additional damage, remove 1 wound whenever an attack destroys an enemy. So this can come in handy as well. Now each character can only have up to 2 artifacts at any time, so if Jerry was able to draw another one at some point, he would have to choose and discard 1 immediately. So that was his first action, and at this point he's trying to make his way to the hospital, which is the next space over, so he's going to spend his second action to move over, and then his third action he's going to go ahead and do a reflect. So he'll go ahead and flip over the hospital card. And with this one, it says that I can either make a combat test or I can take a magic test. So with Jerry, he's going to go ahead and invoke his first level Lightbringer. So he's going to switch this over and bring this one up and mark it at the first level, as we've only spent 1 conviction point. Then he's going to switch out his token, or his standee with the model, and from there then we're going to go ahead and try the magic test, as his magic is much higher than his combat rating. So we need to pass a magic test of 6, and our basic magic is 6. So at this point we're going to roll 2 dice, 1 for the enemy and 1 for us. If we roll equal to or higher than on the blue dice than the red, then we pass the test. All right, so we rolled a 1 for us and a 6 for the enemy. So the 1 gets subtracted from the 6, so that's 5, a -5 to our magic score, which brings us down to magic 1, which will fail that test. So when we fail the test, then we're going to draw Annabelle's Torment card instead from the fragment deck. So we'll go ahead and look through the fragment deck and pick that one out. And I'm not going to tell you what it does, because that will spoil some of the fun. But we've resolved our fragment now, so we are 1 step closer to invoking or manifesting the beast. And then we'll move on to our next player. So our guy down here has a shadow with him. And so he's going to go ahead and, first off, he's going to go ahead and invoke his superhero. And we're going to go ahead and do it at level 2. So he's going to convert 2 of his conviction to nightmare. And then he's going to go ahead and bring out his superhero card. and he's going to go mark it at level 2. So he'll switch out the tokens. And so for level 1, it's a passive ability, and it says Strong Arms. Whenever you move, you may take one anima who shares your location with you to your new location. So he doesn't have anybody else with him, so you can't really do that. And then the second rank passive is Tireless Defender. You may ignore multiple attack penalties in a phase. So the more enemies that attack you, you will have penalties that will come up on them. All right, so from here, then we're going to go ahead and flip over his 2 active ability cards as well, so we can remember those. So he has Eye Beams and Mighty Throw. So the Eye Beams is a free action, and it's going to let us play this card to deal 3 damage to any one enemy on any adjacent space. So we're going to go ahead, and we have to move to the hospital, so we're trying to get up there with our other player. And our movement is 5 right now, so we're going to go ahead and just move right on up there. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for his first action. And his second action is going to be just to move over 1 space and then to resolve the hospital. So with this one, we're going to take a social test, and we're looking for a good number. So again, with any test, we're going to grab 1 blue dice for us and then 1 for the enemy. We rolled a 3 for us and a 5 for the enemy. So the 3 is going to be subtracted from the 5, so the enemy is added -2 to us. And so our social is only 2, and so it's going to bring it down to a 0, so we've failed. So at this point, then, we're going to check the results, and it says 0 to 3 is going to be a certain thing where we can't use the hospital's location ability anymore for the rest of the game. And then from there, it tells us that we're going to have to make it to the DCMA headquarters again. Let's take a closer look at a combat action now. So the first thing we're going to look at is a combat from the player against a shadow. So the shadow's rating is a 2, and its health is 2. So what we're going to do at this point is Scott is going to go ahead and roll 1 blue dice for him and 1 red dice for the enemy. And he's going to compare these results. So he rolled a 4 to a 2. So the 2 is going to get subtracted from the 4, which means that he is at +2. He's going to add that to his combat results, or his combat rating, which is a 1. So now he's at 3. If he had any other bonuses to combat, he would also add those in. And then he's going to compare that number to the enemy's number, combat rating. So if the number is equal to the enemy's combat rating, then he would deal his basic amount of damage, which with Scott it's 2 damage. So the enemy would take 2 damage to its health, which would kill it. If it's higher than it, for each point that it's higher, it does 1 additional damage. So our enemy's combat rating is a 2. And we have a overall combat score of a 3. So we do the 2 base damage plus an additional point of damage for a total of 3 damage. So our enemy would be eliminated at that point. Now, in an example where the enemy is attacking our character, again, the enemy is going to have its combat rating, and then we're going to roll the dice just like we usually do. And so the enemy rolled a little bit higher this time, where he has 6 to our 5, so we're at -1. And so at that point, we would subtract that from our combat rating, which our combat rating is a 1. So our combat rating at this point would be a 0. If it is equal to the combat score of our enemy or higher, then we're okay, we don't take any damage. But since we're lower than it, then we're going to take an amount of damage that is listed next to the bullets here. So our enemy is going to do 1 damage to us, so we would take 1 point of damage. So the other type of enemy that we're going to run into are the Reavers, which are a lot nastier customers. So there are 3 different types of Reavers. You have your Torment Reavers, Ruin Reavers, and Violence Reavers. With both the Torment and the Ruin, when they attack, they're going to flip over the top card of the Dark Magic deck and do whatever it says. Sometimes it's just straight damage, sometimes it adds additional things to their stats, and then they perform specific combat actions with their combat rating or magic rating, and those work the same way as we've already seen. So now we're ready to head back into the night phase. So again, starting at the top of the order, the enemies are going to act. So we have one enemy down here that has a movement of 1, so he's going to move towards the players. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and raise the taint. So we have our 2 locations that are at taint 5 right now, and then the school is at taint 5, so we're going to remove 4 tokens from it and spawn a random shadow. So when we spawn a random shadow, we're going to have to move the gauge, and there is a little dot that's on there. It's hard to see on these, but in the ones that you guys will get, they'll be very clear. And so that'll be the starting spot, and so then that guy is going to move next time. He won't activate this turn because the enemies have already activated at this point. And then we're going to move on to the next step, which is the nightmare check. So each one of our players has got a ton of nightmares, so we're in big trouble here. So they need to roll really, really high. So first off, for our one guy here, he rolls a 6, so he has managed to avoid the nightmare this turn. And our other guy has also rolled a 6. So extremely lucky. We would have ended up with 2 Reavers this turn in our spaces, which could have been really nasty. So unfortunately, they're probably going to come up at some point, but we've at least been able to hold them off for 1 turn. From there, then we're going to go ahead and do the next Beast Strikes card. And so this turn, we've gotten lucky yet again, and the Beast lays dormant for the night, and so there's nothing else that happens. So our players have really dodged a bullet there, as they've been extremely lucky with a lot of the things. So let's go ahead and say, just for the video here, we're going to go ahead and say that our one player did not end up rolling a 6. So in that situation, when the player fails the nightmare, they're going to go ahead and remove all of the nightmare tokens that they have. And they're going to go ahead and grab a shadow token at random again. So this particular one, the dot is on the 1, but then we're going to add a number of points to it based on the number of nightmare that we have. So we're going to add 5 points to that, which is going to put us at the R level, which means that we're going to spawn a Reaver. So at that point, then we would discard this and draw the top card of the Reaver deck. And so we have a Torment Reaver. So these guys are pretty nasty, and in the game that you guys are going to get, you will have actual models for these guys, but for my guys, I just have little tokens. So you would place the token in the space with your heroes, or the hero that spawned it, and then put this next to that space to remind you of what that particular guy does. Well, I hope that gave you guys a good idea of how the game runs and plays, and whether or not you wanted to back in on Kickstarter. I would highly recommend it. I had a lot of fun with the game so far and can't wait to get my hands on a full version of it to check out all the different scenarios that they have in it. On top of that, they have some really cool add-ons that are coming out for it, including that single-player one that will really dive into some of the individual characters so that you can kind of find out more about their backstory and what they're all about. So, as always, if you guys have any questions about this game or any other games that I cover, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below. And if you like this video and you like what I do, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that like button, as both of those things help me out tremendously. And as always, thank you very much for watching.